That's fine.
All right. Clock says live.
Like beach.
All right, welcome back, folks. 9:15. We are now taking up H 921, an act relating to alcoholic beverages. And we're going to hear the Senate proposal of amendments and some testimony on those. And we do have it marked as a possible straw poll, but we want to hear thoughts before we get to that stage of the game. So we are going to open with counsel to walk us through what the Senate did.
Good morning, Rick Sagel, Office of Legislative Counsel. Good to see you all. I'm going to share the Senate proposal of amendments with you all. And just so you all know, this is Tucker Anderson's bill. He's forced me to cover for him against my will. So I am happy to cover for him. Tim was also kind of helping on this crazy time of year. So with that said, I am not an expert in this area of law. My plan is if you have questions that I don't know, I will call Tucker during a break today. If you all have some type of substantive question, or if you want obviously an amendment, I'd probably confer with him. And he has made it known that he's available in case there's a question. But I do know what the Senate has proposed, and I can talk about that. So they have, I believe, 6 instances of amendment. It is not a strike all. So what I'm going to do is go through the Senate proposal and then kind of show you in your House proposal what they are suggesting to amend. Okay, so the first instance is in Section 2, 7 VSA 224, striking out 10 and replacing it with 5. So going to the House bill, we are on page 2 of the House bill. Okay, subsection C1, which is the 4th class licenses section. So as you all passed it, at not more than 10 4th class license locations, a licensed manufacturer or rectifier may sell by the unopened container or distribute by the glass with or without charge. Okay, so the change from the Senate is for replacing 10 with 5. Nothing else has changed in that section. Okay. The second amendment is in also 7 VSA 271, adding a sentence at the end of subsection G. Show you where that is in the House bill. So we are on page, let's see, where are we? Page 5 of the House bill, line 11. So 271 is the manufacturer's or rectifier's license section. So G is a new subsection you all created, and it is a licensed manufacturer of malt beverages may distribute an annual total of not more than 3,000 barrels of the manufacturer's malt beverages directly to holders of 1st or 2nd class licenses. So what the Senate is proposing is adding a sentence to the end of that, so not changing anything about that sentence, which would be the following: a licensed manufacturer of malt beverages shall retain copies of records of distribution and sales made pursuant to the subsection annually or on or before January 15th. A licensed manufacturer shall report to the division in a manner and form required by the commissioner the total amount of malt beverages distributed pursuant to the subsection during the preceding 12 months. Okay.
So was that section we had a sunset on?
Yes. Sorry.
They're just reaffirming.
Yes. And you are previewing, Mr. Chair, with the next instance amendment, which is the 3rd instance, which is striking out section 7 in the House bill, which was your sunset of that language. So it was a sunset in 2028, the prospective repeal. If you want the legal term, that repeal would be repealed. So there would be no sunset. It would shine. I'm trying to find it. I've been working on a way to illustrate that in a funny way.
Tight tequila sunrise jokes into that one.
That's a good one too. Yeah. So anyway, that sunset has been repealed. Okay, that's their 3rd instance of amendment. And the 4th instance is adding 2 new. So 4th adds 2 new sections, 11 and 12, which are not in the House proposal. So in section 11, a new section in the caterer's license definition, in Title VII. Striking out a kind of at the end of the definition of caterer's licenses. I'll read the whole definition here. Caterer's license means a license issued by the Board of Liquor and Lottery, authorizing the holder of a first-class license or first and third-class license to serve alcoholic beverages at a function, and then striking through located on premises other than those occupied by a first and third or second-class licensee to sell alcoholic beverages, and replacing that phrase with pursuant to section 241, which is the next section 12, the next amendment of the Senate. So some of that language you'll see in the 241 section. It's a little bit different, and I'll highlight the difference there. So 241 is amended. It is the caterer's license, commercial caterer's license section. The Board of Liquor and Lottery may issue a caterer's license or a commercial catering license to a person who holds a first-class license or a first and third-class license. So these next two sentences are new. However, this next sentence is similar to what was struck through in the previous section of the definition. The holder of a caterer's license is authorized to serve alcoholic beverages at a function located on the premises other than those occupied by another, so that word is new, another first and third or second class licensee to sell alcoholic beverages. This is a new sentence at the end here. The holder of a caterer's license may host not more than 5 functions per calendar year located on the license holder's own first and third, or second class license premises. Okay. And then the fifth is a conforming instance of amendment. The fifth instance, because section 7 is being deleted, repealed, you don't no longer have to have the effective date of July 1, 2028. So just because the Senate decided to remove the sunset, you also want to remove the effective date of that sunset. The sixth instance is another conforming edit in the effective dates of the bill passed by the House, because they are adding 2 new sections, 11 and 12. This language here would say 9 through 12 instead of 9 and 10. So those new sections will also take effect on passage that the Senate has proposed.
Council, I had a hand from Rep. Waters Evans.
Could you help me understand that the section 12, the caterer's license part again?
I think there are witnesses here that can maybe explain the intent behind it.
Great, thank you. I was just, I guess my question, I'm glad for that, is. Okay, yeah, I'll just ask you at the end. Thanks.
Rep. Nugent,
This might be the same question in another form, but
please.
could you speak a little bit to the function of that change, like what that actually looked like?
So again, I would defer to witnesses, just because I wasn't in the room in the Senate when this was changed. So I don't want to not get it right as to why this was done. Now, if there's a question as to the language, maybe not reflecting what you all wanted to reflect, maybe after hearing from the witnesses, you can let me know and we can make an adjustment.
Or just what it does, I guess, not.
So my read of it, and I'll leave it at that. The current definition of caterer's license, the part that being struck through, I'm guessing the addition of the word another first and third or second class licensee is important. And because otherwise it's the same phrase that was struck through. The additional sentence about the not more than 5 functions, you'll have to, something obviously was decided there.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for council before we move on to our guests? Nope. All right, thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to witnesses now. We're going to start with Chen Hanich. How are you, John? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. Sorry, I missed this the first time around. To be frank, everything has been split up everywhere so that it is very confusing to put together. And when you put it all together, it's really darn shocking. I want to pass a few of these around, and there's about 4, and I'll do the charts also. Thank you for having me here. Thank you, Chairman Byron. Good morning. My name is Jen Kimmick. I'm the co-founder and CEO of The Alchemist. We are a brewery and manufacturing in Waterbury and Stowe, Vermont. We were founded in 2003. We manufacture 100% of our beer here in the state of Vermont. We began fighting Tide Houses in 2002 under the tutelage of Vermont Pub and Brewery founder and American craft beer pioneer Greg Noonan. From the outset of the craft beer movement in Vermont, we and others have realized that if Tide Houses existed here, it would be fairly easy for 1 or 2 large manufacturers to dominate the market and make sure their products were the ones to be sold. Instead, Vermont chose to create policy that fostered small, independent craft brewing in every corner of the state. And if I can just flash back to those years, for 10 years, the VBA's main priority was fighting Tide Houses. The definition of Tide Houses from Vermont Legislative Council is as follows. Tide House laws are alcohol industry regulations that prohibit manufacturers and wholesalers from owning retail establishments or offering them financial inducements like free equipment, loans, or exclusive contracts. These laws maintain the 3-tier system, producer, distributor, and retailer, to prevent monopolies and ensure fair competition. Since that time, every 2 or 3 years, we have provided testimony and resources to protect Vermont's unique and interesting craft beer culture. The current long-standing regulations we have fought so hard to keep in place are what have allowed so many small breweries to open and thrive. And sadly, since the current craft beer market has more supply than demand, many breweries are struggling. I do see some of these proposed changes as a last-ditch effort to save small businesses, but at the same time, we need to understand it is our biggest and most nimble manufacturers that will dominate under this proposed legislation, creating even less space for small brewers. While some of the proposed changes don't seem significant individually, when you put them together, we are talking about monumental change that undermines the anti-monopoly work that so many before have worked hard to keep in place. I want to go through the proposed changes first. The number of off-site tasting rooms. The Vermont Brewers Association and many brewers fought for many years, almost 2 decades, to keep tasting rooms located on site. An exception was made a few years ago when Trapp Family Lodge opened their brewery to allow 1 tasting room on a contiguous property. Somewhere along the line, that contiguous requirement was removed quietly, and some years later, proving the malleability and statute of further weakening the plain meaning of Tide House. Now we are looking at allowing manufacturers to host 5 or even 10, as was originally proposed in the House bill, to off-site tasting rooms. The original concerns still stand. Tasting rooms are bars without the licensing and constraints of bars, able to sell products at lower prices and without serving food. A real tasting room is a place to try and buy something that was made right there, not an alcohol discount shop. The proposals in this bill have forced us to look at what it could mean for our business, The Alchemist. Please note, these are not changes we want to make or have ever planned to make. Our goal has never been to dominate the market or infringe on smaller breweries and independent bars and retailers. However, if this bill is passed as is, we will need to explore this path to stay competitive. Here's what tasting rooms could look like if we pursue them. We, The Alchemist, have 2 separate manufacturing breweries with 2 separate licenses. That means with 5, the allowance of just 5, not 10, we can open 10 tasting rooms. So if we look at our brewery number 1 in Waterbury, we're going to strategically open our tasting rooms all over Southern Vermont. We're going to go to Brattleboro. We're going to go to Manchester. We're going to go to Bennington. We're going to go to White River Junction, and we're going to go to Killington. not through a distributor. We're just going to bring it there and sell it directly to our customers. Our brewery number 2 in Stowe, we're going to open these 5 tasting rooms: Burlington, St. Albans, South Burlington, Virgins, and Essex Junction, where many of our competitors thrive. Now, if these were truly simply tasting rooms as they exist today, one could argue that there's little to no apparent impact on other businesses, but that's not what this bill does. These are not tasting rooms. They are also retail stores as outlined here in the proposed changes. And now I want to go through the changes to the tasting room. Okay. Manufacturers, distillers, winemakers, beer makers, at each of their tasting rooms, all 5 of them, for our case 10, we can sell alcoholic beverages produced by up to 5 other manufacturers. Not 1 SKU from each manufacturer, 5 manufacturers. They may sell unopened beverages or serve them by the glass. They may serve them with or without charge, providing the beverages are purchased on invoice from the producing manufacturers or rectifiers. So it seems to us that these extra tasting rooms are now alcohol tasting and retail shops, where we can sell our own Vermont-made products and those to our friends, those of our friends. And if we had 5 tasting rooms for each manufacturing brewery, we wouldn't need to distribute our beer at all. The Alchemist only makes less than 9,000 barrels of beer a year at each of our breweries. We could easily sell 100% of our beer direct to consumer, cutting out all independent retailers, restaurants, and sadly, local bars. No heady topper at our restaurants or the beverage stores. What kind of impact will this have on the retail hospitality business? But more important, what impact will this have on our independent restaurants, clubs, event venues, and our retail shops? The list goes on and on. I want to get onto the serving portion of this. At any one of our imaginary tasting rooms, we can serve a person a full pint of beer or 2 glasses of wine or a cocktail. We're not required to have food. We're not required to have a first-class license, but our customers will be able to load up their cars with the most affordable Alchemist beer at the lowest direct-to-consumer price, along with other alcohol we decide to sell at lower prices. Bar Hill, Hill Farmstead, Whistle Pig, to name just a few brands, because we're allowed 10. And whatever else you sell to choose from your 5 other manufacturers, we are allowed at the tasting room, which could be up to 25 different manufacturers if we chose so. And we are just 2 breweries. What does it look like? I really want us to really look at it if Bar Hill and Hill Farmstead decide to do the same. And that's just 2 other manufacturers. Each have a bunch of tasting rooms selling each other's products. The state will lose in all of the licensing revenue. The bars will lose revenue. Distributors will be cut out. Independent retailers and bars and restaurants will suffer from unfathomable market disadvantage, threatening the exact reason the Tied House legislation exists and has allowed our Vermont brands to succeed fairly and equitably. So that is just a few small producers. That's just a little of what that is just what a few small producers could do. And I understand this bill correctly. There are no limits for how many products, how many SKUs, how much volume we would be able to sell from those 5 other manufacturers. There's no limits. And there are no limits on how much a manufacturer can sell to those other manufacturers. Nor is there a limit on how many tasting rooms you can directly sell to as a manufacturer. So now we are looking at retail outlet Vermont beverage stores owned and operated by manufacturers. Now, I have a couple of flow charts I'm going to pass around, okay? This one's really simple. You can see we're a manufacturer. We're going to have 5 tasting rooms. This is just half. We have another group, okay? There are a couple points there. We tried to make a graph out of this just to show you how much beer, liquor, wine is going into these tasting room retail shops. This is just us and 2 friends, a brewery and a distillery, And this is nothing going out, but this is so confusing. I was told not to show it to you, but this is just how the spider web begins. This is 3 producers, nothing being sent out. Today in Vermont, we have how many producers? Let me find my number here. This is three producers. We have 170 manufacturers in the state of Vermont. 170. Okay. My hope today, this is a last ditch effort. This is my biggest hope in the world. And Greg Noonan's dying words to us were, please uphold the Tide House regulations in this law so that our villages are unique and everyone has a chance. My hope today is that the House agrees to change this amendment, is not to pass this amendment, but to sunset the provision allowing tasting rooms in 2 years. Force another legislature to review all of the effects. Let's look at the controls on price manufacturers can use selling among themselves. Can't lower the price that VTD, Vermont Liquor and Lottery sells it for. Require food and snacks. Push off implementation date. We want to ditch the number of manufacturers you can resell to. We want more controls on how much can be sold between manufacturers. There is so much that needs to be done to this sloppy bill that opens up so much. It deregulates all manufacturing in the state, to be frank. And it's my hope that you sunset this and we can redress it next year, seriously and pragmatically with real data. Thank you. And I apologize to waste your time. I've been here every 2 years. I talked to the commissioner 2 years ago. I've talked to Representative Byron about this in years past, and this just came to my attention about a month ago. Every year, little pieces getting snuck in, and it's a waste of everyone's time. Do you have any questions?
No hands?
And if I seem angry, I am. I'm angry and I'm sad because I seem like the pariah here, but we're looking out for the uniqueness of our state and small brewers. And they're coming out and saying, like, I actually had the commissioner ask me, do you not want this to pass because you don't want others to have the same opportunity the Alchemist did? And that was just quite insulting. I don't know where all the back scratching's coming from. I don't know. It's all sneaky and I don't like it. I'm willing to take questions over the next however long, phone calls, meetings.
Really interesting. So thank you for sharing this. Just at a high level, it sounds like what you're saying is I'm a nature nerd, so ecosystem of this system, and that this seems like it could really upset that in a way that maybe is unintended.
This is the antithesis of Vermont. It is.
Any other questions before we move on to the next one?
And your local beverage store, do you think they could compete with us when we open our discount beverage store, selling liquor and wine from our friends? Bar Hill, Green Mountain Sunshine, beer, 20% less than them. And there are others they'll go bigger and deeper. There are plans in place. People are already changing their packaging for this. You know, there are small brewers that don't really understand, small producers. They're just looking at the thing that helps them. And there are bigger, more powerful brewers and restaurant groups that know what's going on and they're sitting quietly and they haven't talked about this. And that's why members of the VPA don't have clarity.
Questions? That's a great segue to the Brewers Association. Who's our next one?
Thank you.
Emma, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Chair Byron and Vice Chair Hango and members of the committee for welcoming me back once again. For the record, my name is Emma Arian. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Brewers Association, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue this conversation around H921 and Section 6 after previous testimony for both this committee and the Senate Economic Development Committee. The immediate question before the committee today is whether to recommend that the House concur with the Senate amendment to H 921. We respectfully urge you to concur. In particular, we support the Senate's removal of the sunset provision in Section 6. With the addition of the reporting requirement, and given the awkward timing of distributor license years beginning in April, a July 1st sunset is an unnecessary and would create confusion and disruption for businesses and regulators alike. Under the bill, manufacturers will be required to report annually the total amount of beer distributed over the preceding 12 months, ensuring the legislature and regulators will have meaningful data to evaluate how this policy is working in practice. The Vermont Brewers Association represents 58 breweries, more than 90% of the breweries in Vermont. Our industry contributes roughly $460 million annually to Vermont's economy and supports approximately 2,800 jobs. I'm here again today in support of H 921, specifically Section 6, which would allow limited self-distribution for breweries under their existing manufacturing license. This proposal has already moved through the Department of Liquor and Lottery, multiple legislative committees, and both chambers. The process has been thoughtful, collaborative, and transparent, with testimony from brewers, distributors, industry groups, and regulators. At every stage, Section 6 remained intact because lawmakers recognized it as a measured response to real challenges facing small breweries. What has been especially notable throughout this process has been the collaboration across Vermont's beer, wine, and distilled spirits industries. Producers and stakeholders have worked hard together in good faith to support thoughtful modernization that helps Vermont manufacturers grow while preserving appropriate safeguards. I also emailed Chair Byrong and Vice Chair Hango a PDF compilation of 14 emails sent to Speaker Croinci in support of H 921 that I was CC'd on between Sunday and yesterday morning from stakeholders across the beer, wine, and spirits industries. The breadth of support reflects how strongly Vermont producers believe this legislation is needed. The distribution landscape in Vermont has changed dramatically. In just the past 2 years, Vermont has lost Craft Vermont, Vermont Beer Shepherd, and now Calmont Beverage Company. This consolidation continues. The smallest breweries are increasingly losing access to market opportunities. Section 6 does not dismantle the three-tier system. It's a narrow and practical adjustment that allows breweries to self-distribute up to 3,000 barrels annually under their existing manufacturing license. This gives small breweries the opportunity to establish local accounts, grow responsibly, and eventually become stronger wholesale partners. Importantly, Vermont would not be an outlier. Maine and New Hampshire already allow limited self-distribution under manufacturing license while maintaining healthy wholesaler networks. Vermont has a long history of modernizing alcohol laws in ways that support small local producers while maintaining strong regulation. Section 6 continues that tradition. It's thoughtful, limited, and responsive to today's marketplace realities. At this point, it is concerning that what feels like an 11th hour effort made by an opposing voice could delay or derail legislation that has already been thoroughly vetted and broadly supported. As I previously testified to this committee, the proposals in both Section 6 regarding beer distribution and Section 2 regarding fourth-class licenses, before they were even brought to the legislature, were proposed and vetted at length by both the Vermont Brewers Association, with our members, our beverage industry colleagues, and our regulators. Despite numerous opportunities to participate, only recently during that 12-month process were the concerns that you have heard today raised. I respectfully urge you to concur with the changes proposed by the Senate and support the swift passage of H 921 and keep Section 6 intact. Passage of this bill will strengthen Vermont's brewing industry and help create opportunities for manufacturers to grow their businesses, supporting jobs, local investment, and tourism across the state. Thank you for your time and your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And the email packet that Emma referenced that was sent is posted on today's page, so it's there for reference should anybody should take a look at it. Questions for the Brewers Association? No? All right. Rep. Nugent.
Could you expand on why you think that those concerns are either not valid or inaccurate.
Yeah, so I also submitted a chart which shows what you can currently do under current law as passed by Senate and as passed by the House. Currently, the number of fourth class locations that you can have is 20 total licenses. So you can already have 20 establishments where you can sell by the unopened container. At one of those currently, you can sell up to 5 other manufacturers, 8-ounce total of beer, wine, RTD, and 1 ounce total of spirits. This just expands on it a little bit more, but it's already out there in the world, just expanding on it a bit more based on the needs of the wine and the distilled spirits industry.
The statute says, one tasting room now, so where's the 20?
You can have 20 fourth class licenses.
All right, I'm calling hands.
Sorry.
I can testify.
Thank you. So Commissioner Knight, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, we have the fourth class license is allowed for Vermont manufacturers. It's always been in existence. Well, within the last decade or so. You are allowed 20 fourth class licenses, a manufacturer is, that was passed in 2023. Fourth class license is tasting room where you can go in, sample and buy unopened bottles. It's also a farmer's market permit. So it's allowing manufacturers to go out into a farmer's market or a tasting room and have visitors and Vermonters and whoever else sample, taste, and then buy.
Rep. Nugent?
So part of what I'm getting from the changes the Senate made, I'm just wondering if I have this right, but is this any longer the tasting rooms are tied to a specific physical location, or is it just anywhere? Is that kind of what changed? A fourth class license is, a tasting room is a physical location. Fourth class license was never tied to a manufacturing site. You can have a fourth class license on a manufacturing site, but it's never tied to a manufacturing site. They're only offered by manufacturers, fourth class license.
Questions from Brewers Association? Okay, we'll circle back after the other witnesses. Yes, Representative.
Thank you. I don't really have a question for everyone. I just want to say this is a little confusing and I'm caught off guard by what's
Likewise.
going on here.
Yeah.
And I feel like, is this scheduled for a vote right now?
It's possible.
Oh, okay, yes, I don't feel comfortable
No way.
extrapolating at this point in time. I just need, I don't know, I am more confused now than I was when we came in here, so I think I need to just maybe, I guess, hear the rest of the
Yeah, we got a good
testimony.
rest of the testimony. We have the
Yeah.
Distillers Association and the Commissioner, so all, yeah.
Yes, I know, I was just sort of wondering if the rest of the committee was feeling the same way, or, okay.
How can we rectify the inconsistencies of three?
Let's play it first. Okay, one at a time.
That's two extremes.
One at a time, please, one at a time. Representative Hoover, then Pisell.
I think I said it, but I just, I mean, it's incredible. Well, I'm confused, like this.
We'll move on to the witnesses and we get some clarity. Rep. Pisell, and then I'll go back to the Brewers Association.
I just keep going, every time we talk about this, I go back to that piece of paper that I fortunately saved that Black Distilling, Flannel Company gave us, describing all the different tiers and the class 4, because even as a town clerk, I didn't even know that class 4 licenses were out there. So it's a good information. I don't know if Ned can post this on our site so everybody can see it. Do you have this, Ned? It was from the Black Flannel Company back in February 11th, they gave it to us. And it explains all the different the tiers and then the sample we met permit. Yeah. It's really good. Helps clarify what class 4 means and the different locations and stuff.
Yes, no, it is definitely,
Might help
there's a lot of
everybody.
nuance.
I
to
think we
this.
have this chart that's on the wall. Yeah.
All right. Emma, you had something to offer?
Want to bring it back to section 6, which is the BBA's priority section around self-distribution. I know Mimi and Commissioner Knight will also answer questions on section 2, which has to do with fourth class manufacturing. But I'm here on behalf of section 6. So
Yes.
if there's any questions there, that's where I can be the most help.
Bringing it back home for your focused testimony. Appreciate that. All right. If there's nothing else for Emma, we'll go over to Mimi.
Okay, I have handouts about the licenses and
Right, for the visual learners.
those pictures.
Paper.
Tears.
Okay.
Okay, hi, I'm Mimi Bettenheim. Thank you for allowing me to testify on behalf of the Distilled Spirits Council of Vermont and as president of Mad River Distillers in Warren. I also want to thank the committee for its work on the miscellaneous alcohol bill. It's a key piece of legislation to help multiple arms of the beverage industry in Vermont. I'm testifying in support of the Senate amendment to H 291 and urge you to concur. I want to be very clear that we, the distillers, care deeply about maintaining fair competition and preserving the guardrails that prevent inappropriate cross-tier influence. And when I say tiers, I mean the separation between suppliers, distributors, which in our case for spirits is the DLL, and the retailers/restaurants. I don't believe that H 921 is a threat to the three-tier system. Vermont law already contains exceptions to cross-tier restrictions for manufacturers, including tasting rooms, farmers markets, special events, and certain on-premise activities at manufacturing facilities. The brewer's own Tied House materials recognize that Vermont law has evolved over time to allow targeted exceptions while preserving the broader three-tier framework. Title VII recognizes that small manufacturers need limited regulated ways to reach consumers directly. In the case of spirits, there are roughly 80 802 spirits stores, while there are over 1,000 that sell wine and beer. Vermont allows manufacturers to apply for Class 4 licenses, which allow us to have tasting rooms, and apply for special events and farmers market licenses. This was previously said, but it's already in the statute that we can have up to 20 Class 4s, which includes the farmers markets and tasting rooms. So that's been around for a while. H 921 is not a radical departure from that system. It is a narrow, carefully vetted update to a framework Vermont already has. The two Class 4 changes in practical terms: a Class 4 license is not a regular bar license. It's a manufacturer's tasting room and retail license. It allows a Vermont producer to introduce customers to its products, offer limited tastings with controlled pour limits. It's far less alcohol than at a bar. And you can sell bottles for off-premise consumption. These are tourism, education, and product discovery spaces. They are not meant to operate like full-service bars or restaurants. If you want to open a full-service bar or restaurant, you must apply for a whole different set of permits. It's possible to have multiple licenses in one space, but they are all tightly regulated. One of the Class 4 changes in H 921 was proposed by Vermont's vintners. It modestly increases the allowable tasting room pour limits with the intention that manufacturers using a Class 4 license away from their manufacturing premise can offer something closer to a normal glass of wine while still remaining far below the privileges of a full bar or restaurant license. This is important because many Vermont businesses are located in rural areas, often far from the visitor centers and tourism corridors where customers actually discover Vermont products. In this case, H 921 makes a narrow practical update within Vermont's existing regulatory framework. To be clear, H 921 does not create open-ended bar privileges for manufacturers. It does not allow manufacturers to open unlimited restaurants. It does not allow manufacturers to take over the retail tier. It does not erase Vermont's tied house laws. It does not eliminate distributors. It does not allow a free-for-all. The distillers proposed an additional change to Class 4 tasting rooms, which the Senate amended, allowing a manufacturer or rectifier to sell certain products from additional manufacturers at not more than 5 fourth-class locations. For spirits producers, this provision is especially important. Under the bill, a small Vermont spirits manufacturer could purchase products directly from a limited number of other Vermont spirits manufacturers and offer them in a limited number of Class 4 tasting rooms. This would allow Vermont producers to work together, introduce visitors to more Vermont-made products, and support the local beverage economy while remaining within a regulated system. This bill allows manufacturers to collaborate responsibly. In the case of the self-distribution for malt beverage manufacturers, this provision is designed to help smaller brewers reach more customers or more consumers in an era of distribution consolidation and huge distributor portfolios. No one can sell your product like you can. The provision does not eliminate distributors. It does not allow unlimited self-distribution. The House passed bill limits malt beverage self-distribution to an annual total of not more than 3,000 barrels. The Senate amendment added record keeping and annual reporting requirements. This is a limited reported regulated pathway, not blind deregulation. I understand the concern that large manufacturers could gain an unfair advantage. No one wants a system where a large company can use its size to dominate retailers, restaurants, or smaller competitors, but that's not what H 921 authorizes. The bill has important guardrails. Self-distribution is capped and reported. The bill doesn't help large manufacturers. Brands already under distribution franchise agreements cannot simply bypass those agreements. Existing tied house laws and common ownership restrictions remain in place. Only licensed beverage manufacturers may hold a Class 4 tasting room license. Class 4 tasting rooms remain limited in how much alcohol they may serve. It's very tightly regulated, the amounts, very different than a bar. Class 4 tasting rooms are not the same as full service bars or restaurants. And the ability to offer other manufacturers' products is limited. In conclusion, H 921 does not throw out the system. It updates the system in a narrow way to help small producers survive and grow. Mad River Distillers is based in Warren, and we operate multiple tasting rooms. Of all the Northeast states, Vermont is especially known for its makers, and Title VII and its adaptations have allowed our local beverage industry to become world-class. Like many Vermont manufacturers, we depend on visitors, local partnerships, responsible tastings, and the ability to tell the story of what we make. The Class 4 provisions in H 921 would help businesses like ours support one another and encourage visitors to discover more Vermont products. This bill strengthens Vermont's beverage industries while preserving important safeguards. It reflects a lot of work, a lot of compromise, and a lot of collaboration. It reflects input from the DLL, reflects support from brewers, distillers, and vintners. It's narrow, practical, and regulated. I urge you to concur with the Senate amendment to H 291. Thank you for your time and consideration, and please let me know if I can answer questions.
So there's obviously some difference of opinion in terms of what is limited versus what seems like a lot to someone seems like a small amount to others. So I'm just wondering if anyone has done the math in terms of what's allowed now, like number of places, like how this would expand versus, what's the upper end that this would anticipate.
So the upper end right now is that in this bill that at 5 Class 4 locations, you can have up to 20. You can sell other people's products. And what that means in a practical sense is Mad River Distillers does not make vodka or gin. So now I can put somebody else's Vermont vodka or gin in one of our tasting rooms, and things like the other thing I want to mention that hasn't been mentioned before is that when you serve cocktails or full pours at a tasting room, it's because you have a Class 3 license, which is the bar license. As a manufacturer, you can only get that Class 3 license on your manufacturing premise. I think that is a little confusing in the context here. So I could open 20 tasting rooms across the state of Vermont where all I do is serve quarter ounce pours. That's the limit in spirits. It's quarter ounce of each product up to 4 right now. And this bill would increase it to 8. So we're talking little tastings and I can sell full bottles. On my manufacturing facility, I can also get a class 3 license, which allows me to do cocktails. On those places, you can also have the class 4, so you can serve full bottles. So I'll give you an example. Our location in Burlington is a manufacturing premise. We also sell bottles. We make an espresso martini. We use Metcalfe's maple cream liqueur. Under this law, now I can sell Metcalfe's and do a little like make this cocktail at home kind of thing. Sort of that's the idea. And tasting rooms are extremely expensive to operate. You know, the state isn't big enough, frankly, to just like open them willy-nilly. First of all, how would I staff them? They're very hard to staff. We've already been able to do 20 tasting rooms for several years now, and you don't see an explosion of them throughout the state because practically speaking, they're hard to operate. This, in a sense, allows us to partner with other makers and get our products out there in other locations that we wouldn't necessarily be able to like fully staff and fund an independent tasting room. Does that answer your question?
Any other questions for Mimi? Get over to Commissioner Pike. Seeing no hands. All right. No,
Okay.
thank you, Mimi.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner, good morning.
Where? Morning, everyone. Try to be brief since it's sweltering in here. For the record, I'm Wendy Knight, the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. I would like to bring us back to the amendment that we're here to discuss, and that is the Senate Amendment H 921. We've talked for months, all of us here, about the bill. And so I can answer some of the questions you have, but I want to focus on the amendment first. First, we're talking about the Senate is amending the H 921 to limit the number of tasting rooms, the 4th class licenses, from 10 to 5. And that is, those are the 4th class licenses that would be allowed to have additional Vermont manufactured products. Okay. Remember when we were first discussing this bill, it was 20 4th class tasting rooms that were allowed additional products. To clarify, I said over there, the 4th class licenses are given to manufacturers. We expanded that from 10 to 20 a few years ago, and that is the tasting rooms and the farmers market permit. The other provision the Senate has made is striking the sunset of the self-distribution and adding a reporting mechanism so that the DLL understands that the brewers are only distributing what's allowed in the bill. You heard from your attorney about the sunsets and deleting the effective dates, which gets a little confusing because they've moved around the sections, but basically we're deleting the sunset of the self-distribution. The catering license, to answer your questions about that earlier. So a catering license is given to a 1st and 3rd class license. So 1st and 3rd class is on premise. You're doing beer, wine, 3rd is spirits, right? And those on premise establishments are allowed to get a catering permit. Right now, we do not allow events to take place on another person's license, right? So we can't have, Matt has a restaurant, I can't, with a liquor license, I can't come in as a caterer and have my own event with my own catering license. You can't do that, right? For obvious reasons, who's accountable, things like that. So what the new provision allows is if you have a establishment with a 1st and a 3rd class license, you have an on-premise license, you also have a 2nd class license. So you have a store that's adjacent to it. And we have a few of those establishments where the place in the beer cellar in Waterbury, Salt and Bubbles in Essex. So there's a building and part of it is a first and third class on-premise licensed establishment. We can have something to eat and have something to drink. The other part of that is a second class of retail store. So it's this change allows that owner to have a finite number, 5 events in that entire space. Okay. So it gives some flexibility to those establishments that own the entire building that is sectioned off by first and third, the on-premise, and then the retail store, second class license. It's just allowing 5 events in the entire space that's owned by one owner. Okay. And we've gone through deleting the sunset. So we have been talking about some of these changes for more than 3 years. Some of these changes were included in 2023 miscellaneous alcohol bill. I have been having some of these conversations probably for 8 or 9 years when I was the tourism and marketing commissioner. So they're long time coming for some of these changes. As we talked about earlier in the session, the Vermont has made very strategic, disciplined changes to the licenses. So for example, manufacturing, now years ago, we allowed a 4th class license. So this is just a little bit of an expansion of the 4th class license. It really is increasing market opportunities for Vermont craft beverage. I would urge you to look back at our written testimony that we submitted a couple of days ago and our written testimony from weeks ago that kind of explained the current regulatory structure and the 3-tiered system in Tide House. Nothing in this bill would erode the Tide House. Again, these are very deliberate expansions. The one thing I will note is that 4th class license, remember we expanded that from 10 to 20 a few years ago. We have not seen an increase in the number of tasting rooms. So what we are seeing largely in those 4th class licenses is manufacturing. So we've expanded it to 20 that already exist, and yet we're not seeing a proliferation of the 4th class licensing tasting rooms. So given all of the work that we have done in terms of trying to educate you about what currently is allowed and the very deliberate conversations that we've had both in the Senate and the House with the stakeholders for months, we would respectfully urge you to adopt the Senate amendment and to H 921. I'm here for additional questions.
Does anybody have any questions? And I apologize that I was out of the room, so I don't know if you got your question answered, because I think it was sort of mine too. Like,
Yeah.
you have a question, Rep. Waters Evans?
I mean, I have 1,000 questions,
Okay,
but I'm hoping that someone can remind me, I don't know, if it's Commissioner, maybe someone who was on GovOps last night, I remember having this conversation about, the chair's back, that's good. Maybe like,
Sorry, I had to go talk to Chair Harcock.
no, it's okay. I just was wondering, I'm trying to remember why Commissioner Knight just reminded me when she was talking that we had talked about this part with the retail and the serving, the events or the.
Contiguous spaces? Or?
Yes, and I remember, you just reminded me that we did talk about it a couple of years ago and we decided not to include it, but I can't for the life of me remember what our problem was with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a 3-year-old conversation. Can't remember directly. I'm sure it's similar testimony.
Yeah, so my recollection of that is that was not included. It was an oversight or an error. It was not intentionally not included. I think there was confusion about what the 4th class license was. So the 4th class license, it's a tasting room.
Yeah.
It's not a 3rd class or a 1st class, which manufacturers are allowed to get. And I think there was confusion, as there is confusion now. There shouldn't be any confusion, right? We've had numerous testimony on fourth class license is allowed for Vermont manufacturers. It's essentially introducing your product to people with some samples, and then they buy the bottle. Same price as what's allowed for spirits as DLL in an 802 spirit store. A first or a third class license is a restaurant on premise, right? So first is the wine or beer and the third is spirits. So those are two different licenses, very different establishments. So fourth class is really trying to help the Vermont craft manufacturers to introduce their product across the state to other, to businesses that want to sell their product, as Mimi was talking about. So if you're a spirits manufacturer, you want to bring in a cider manufacturer or a wine manufacturer or a beer manufacturer, and this provision allows you to have more of those tasting rooms where you can sell additional products. Again, small samples, and then bottles. A first or a third class is you go into a restaurant and you see the back shelf, you see the menus, it's hundreds of products that you're selling is in a cocktail, pull pour, and the limit of a first and a third class is not over serving. There's not a limit. A bartender or a mixologist is not, you can't say, we're only allowed to serve you one glass of wine. That's not how it works in a first or a third class. You can get 5 or 6, as long as they're not over serving, right? You see the difference? They're very different structures.
See a hand from the gallery.
May I ask a question about the manufacturing license?
Identify yourself, please.
Sorry, I am Ashley Roberts. I'm the CFO of The Alchemist. I just have a question about the manufacturing license. Is there a limited number of volume that you have to produce in order to apply for a manufacturing license?
I don't believe so. Yep, I can check on that. And then the self-distribution we've talked about is allowing the brewers to have an option, just like the wineries who self-distribute with a limited quantity, which we've talked about.
Yeah, I actually have a question for Jennifer. So I am sorry if I'm asking questions that are, it's simple.
A lot, it's confusing.
Yes, so can you tell me, why don't you want this? Like, I mean, I understood from your testimony that you didn't and that it was upsetting, and I understand the tiny house part, but why wouldn't you want for like your business? It seems to me like it would help your business.
I don't want to put a tasting room on Church Street where I sell full pints of Heady Topper for $5 and sell all of our beer for less than Pearl Street and everyone else, and Bar Hill and Whistle Pig, and have a little monopoly. I don't want to go to Morrisville and open up a tasting room across the street from Moose. Commissioner was talking about how our current tasting rooms run with small tastes, and you buy the product from that producer. We're talking about now 2 glasses of wine and products from 5 different manufacturers in the shop. That isn't a tasting room. And that's the crux of my issue. We're talking about, nobody's really added on 4th class tasting rooms. It's a moot point. Then why are we trying to get 10? And why are we changing the definition of it? And at the same time, the self-distribution for a small quantity up to 3,000 barrels a year. The Alchemist distributes about 3,000 barrels a year from one of our breweries. When we started distributing, we distributed $300. And I think we really need to ask why. Why not just get the wholesale license like we and everyone else are doing? Good measure. It's $1,200 a year. And when I asked the director, what is the straight face answer? Why are people not wanting to just be regulated and start their wholesale business? Because they can't afford the $1,200. Well, how the heck are they gonna afford to open tasting rooms if they can't afford $1,200 to distribute up to 3,000 barrels of beer a year? That's a lot of beer. The Alchemist brewed 400 barrels the first 11 years we were in business, then 1,200 for year 12 and 13. And then we got up to 3,000 for year 14, 15, and now we're at 9,000 at each brewery. It's a lot of beer. 2 glasses of wine is a lot of wine. A full pint of up to 12% beer is a lot of beer. No food. Then, okay, we have 150 manufacturers each. Just say they have 3 tasting rooms. We have 450 tasting rooms around the state. I don't want people on the highway going to our tasting rooms, having full pints and a couple glasses of wine. And I can't wrap my head around why TLL is supporting this, public safety wise. I can't for the life of me. And the reason distributors aren't here and then restaurant association isn't here is because they don't understand the bolts of this. And that is the changes in the definition of what the tasting room is.
Can you clarify for me, when you say that you could sell it for the product for less, is it because there's no middle person?
Sure, so
you make money like a bar because it's your own product?
So we sell our beer to a distributor for about $40 a case. It gets sold for about $62 a case to the retailer, and then they mark it up another 20%. Already in the state of Vermont, you can self-distribute up to 1,500 gallons of beer a year. That's a lot of beer. So it's not our smaller producers that are asking for this. It's not. In fact, I would say it's ironic that the head of the VBA board actually brews 3,000 barrels a year as a distillery. We have a restaurant group of VBA. We have a restaurant group that's been here and fighting for this legislation for over 20 years. 20 years ago, they wanted to start a mothership brewery in the Intervale. Everyone shot it down. They wanted to have restaurants all over the state. They now own 3 breweries and they changed their packaging. A lot of it says from the mothership. They have restaurants all over the state of Vermont. Okay, so the idea that these changes are for our smallest producers, maybe there are some things that would help them. But if we're really talking about a $1,200 a year license for the self-distribution, they have bigger problems. And the state needs that money. I just can't wrap my head around it. I don't know where this is all coming from. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that is a good
None of it
question.
makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's a question that I've had too, is like, where are these suggested changes coming from?
And there's no limits to anything. We have a brewer in this state that has a small brewery. They produce a little bit of beer here, to use the Vermont name, but about 90% of their beer is made in Connecticut, contract brewed. They ship it in. How are we gonna deal with that? We have winemakers that make beer, we have distillers that make beer, own their own distribution companies. It deserves a proposed piece of legislation on its own because it is so incredibly complex.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just, I would like to correct a couple of inaccuracies.
Mhm.
There is no self-distribution that's allowed with the brewers right now. Beer, you cannot self-distribute. The wineries can. So remember, some of this changes was to have some parity between the different sectors of the alcohol industry in Vermont. And to your question, Representative Shea.
Representative Shea is fine.
Shea. Rep Shea. So you've been hearing testimony all session, and then 3 years ago, you heard testimony from a variety of stakeholders, right? You've heard from brewers, you've heard from wineries, you've heard from distilled spirits, and then you've heard from the department. As we talked about throughout the session, the department uses the lens of if proposed changes to Title VII are going to help Vermont companies and Vermont manufacturers, Vermont businesses grow, then we are supportive of that as long as it doesn't negatively impact public safety. And as we've testified repeatedly, there are no public safety, negative public safety implications of anything in the bill. And so that's why the department supports it, because it supports the Vermont manufacturers in terms of economic growth and does not negatively impact public safety. Okay,
Just for I see your hand, Jen. Any other questions or clarifying comments for? Sure, right there. I see your hand, Jen.
I have a comment. This is from the legislature, Vermont.gov. Under Vermont law, small breweries producing 50,000 barrels or less annually are allowed to self-distribute or sell directly to licensors. These brewers can sell up to 93,000 gallons or 3,000 barrels of beer per calendar year directly off-premise stores, bars, and restaurants.
I don't know what-
3,000, it's for 3,000.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
legislature got from Vermont.
correct. It's not in Title VII. Brewers cannot currently self-distribute. And that's why it's proposed in H 920.
I'll be conscious of getting on the floor, Redstone.
So maybe just so it doesn't become political, we just have let council come back in. I don't feel comfortable voting on this right now because there's too much, too high. So I just say, maybe we should just have ledge council in here to be that person, to be able to say, not that I don't believe you, but just the referee.
Rep Boyd.
Yeah, I think it's important that we focus on the Senate proposal of amendment. We took weeks and weeks of testimony on H 921 from folks within the industry, from restaurateurs, DLL, so many people. These are changes to statute that we have very much vetted, and the Senate is just making adjustments to them.
All right, so. Any other comment from anyone before we wrap for the morning? Should be getting up to the floor just in time for actual activity. Yep. Yes. Nope, seeing no hands. All right, thank you, everyone. This conversation will continue.
Thank
And